Could the Minnesota Vikings be trading for superstar wide receiver Tyreek Hill? We're going to talk about it on today's edition of Vikings Now by Chat Sports. My name is Patrick Siepman, and I appreciate you guys taking time out of your day to watch me talk about my favorite football team, the Minnesota Vikings, and we're going to talk about Tyreek Hill. But why are we talking about this? Tom Pelissero tweeting out earlier on this morning saying with Jordan Addison suspended and multiple injuries, the Vikings are seriously exploring veteran wide receivers in the trade market. All-Pro Justin Jefferson is on track for Week 1, but his early season running mate may not be on the roster. And Pelissero, hinting at the injuries, well, they've gotten worse since that tweet. Today at practice, some Vikings wideouts got banged up. Kevin Seifert tweeting this out. This turned out to be a pretty physical practice. Wide receivers, Jordan Addison and Ty Felton left with what looked like to be hand and arm injuries. They remained on the sidelines, but didn't resume practicing. Then also Jeff Okudah, not good there, went inside mid-practice with his right shoe off. So you're looking at this wide receiver room for Week 1. Nailor's hurt. Ty Felton's hurt. Rondell Moore out for the year. You got Justin Jefferson, Lucky Jackson, Tim Jones, Jayshon Jones. There's no doubt in my mind the Vikings will make a move for a wide receiver, but how big is that fish? We'll see. Maybe it's the size of Tyreek Hill. We'll discuss here in a second. But if you guys could hit that subscribe button today, because if we get any more news or rumors about the Vikings trading for a wide receiver, I'll stop whatever I'm doing and get a video for you guys ASAP. And plus, we're taking on Bears now in our little subscriber battle for Week 1. We're going to do a race to 100 subscribers. So I'm trying to get it on today's show. I know there's 100 of you guys watching right now that aren't subscribed. So hit that subscribe button today and help us beat Bears now in a Week 1 sub battle. Now, I want to get my take out here to start today's show. I am all in on the Vikings trading for Dolphins wide receiver Tyreek Hill. Could you imagine what this team and what this offense could look like if we acquired the Dolphins wide receiver and you roll out there Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, Tyreek Hill? It would create the best big three in NFL history at the wide receiver position. And if you have a chance to do something that great where it won't cost you, a future first or possibly a future second, I see the Vikings pick up the phone, call Miami, and see what you can do and try to acquire Tyreek Hill. But I'm all in on the move. Get Tyreek back in the purple and gold. That was his childhood team growing up. His kid's favorite player is Justin Jefferson. It makes all too much sense. But also Tyreek, still one of the better football players in the National Football League. I mean, it was just 2 seasons ago. This guy was in the conversation to win the MVP award. This is not just some, very good wide receiver. This is an all-time great talent. This is one of the best receivers we have ever seen in NFL history. And I do feel like sometimes as fans, we undervalue great. Where, we obviously know if players are good compared to great, but sometimes I feel like we undervalue like an all-time great receiver, and that's what Tyreek Hill is. I mean, the 2023 numbers are ridiculous. The guy went for 1,800 yards and 13 touchdowns just 2 seasons ago. Now, can he replicate that? Does he still have that juice? Probably not. But can he give you 1,200, 1,300 yards still? 110%. But we got to talk about the financials here because that's a big kicker. So right now, the Vikings have $27 million to spend for this upcoming season. Now, originally I thought the Vikings were just going to roll most of that money over since they are kind of up against the cap for that 2026 season. But if you could just spend 15 of that $27 million on a guy like Tyreek Hill, I'm doing it. Now, also, you guys probably see that number in 2026 of $39 million and are freaking out. That's not guaranteed. So, hypothetically, if the Vikings trade for Tyreek Hill, and let's just say, worst case scenario, it doesn't go well, the Vikings fizzle out, it's not a good move. You can cut Tyreek after the season, and it would just create a $15 million dead cap hit in 26, and then 3.17 in 27, and then the same years after in 28 and 29, just 3.17 million. So it's not really that risky of the move financially. And could you imagine just seeing these 3 guys, like everybody for a second? Imagine you're an opposing defense and you're playing the Minnesota Vikings this upcoming week. And hopefully the Vikings are a better rushing team than they've been the last couple of years. And they're running the football well. And then you got to line up against those wide receivers and you're staring at the best wideout in the game, a potential top 5 wide receiver of all time in Jefferson. You got one of the best 2s in the league. I think he's a top 20 wide receiver. And Tyreek Hill, I think he's still a top 12 receiver in the league. So you got 3 top 20 guys in the league with a top 5 tight end, a top 5 offensive line, 2 good running backs, and Jordan Mason and Aaron Jones, and Kevin O'Connell calling the shots, sign me up. But what could a trade look like? First trade idea here. It would just be Tyreek Hill straight up for a 2026 second-round pick. I think this would get it done in a heartbeat. I think if Miami could get a second for Tyreek Hill, they would say yes immediately. So this would be a move where it's like a desperation trade for the Minnesota Vikings where, Kwesi is just saying, hey, we have a need at this wide receiver position. We got to go get a guy. And a guy like Tyreek Hill is on the table, might as well. He's one of the best talents in the National Football League. And, we'll give credit to Purple for the Win podcast here. Saw him tweet this out, F them picks. This is obviously coming from the Los Angeles Rams when they acquired Von Miller and they were, and Jalen Ramsey, where they were super aggressive on the trade front and they gave multiple first-round picks, but they got a Super Bowl out of it. Like, be honest, that second-round pick for next season, is that guy we're going to draft going to be anywhere close to Tyreek Hill? Is he going to have anywhere close to the impact that Tyreek's going to have? Absolutely not. And if we're playing in the NFC title game, if we're potentially playing in the Super Bowl, are you going to care about that second-round pick? Again, absolutely not. But maybe you can include a player in there. What about this? A 2026 third-round pick and Blake Brandel. The Miami Dolphins have a massive need at their offensive line. And Blake Brandel would probably go there and end up starting. You could also maybe swap out Blake Brandel, throw in Justin School in there. But this trade, I'll be in on it as well. But between the two trades, you guys let me know. What one are you doing? Would you rather give up the second-round pick and no player, keep the depth on the offensive line? Or are you going with the second trade idea here, where it's a 2026 third-round pick, but you're also including some depth with Blake Brandel? Give me a 1 or give me a 2. You guys let me know what trade idea you guys would like for Tyreek Hill, but I'm doing either of these. If Miami offers either of these trades, I'm saying absolutely. You guys let me know which one or 2 down below. Now, coming up next year on the program, I do want to talk about some other wide receivers because, Tyreek Hill trade is fantastic. Like, that sounds great on paper, but how likely is it? I think it has a chance, but I do want to talk about some more likely options here coming up next. But before we do so, today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks, and preseason football is underway, and college football is here. So don't miss any of the action this season on Prize Picks. And if you guys download the Prize Picks app today and plug in promo code CLNS, you guys will get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. But Prize Picks is simple to play. All you got to do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections. If you get your picks right, you can cash in and win up to 2,000 times your money. Prize Picks is the best way to get action on sports in more than 40 states, including California, Texas, Florida, and Georgia. Prize Picks puts their members first, so all withdrawals are safe, fast, safe, and secure. Prize Picks offers Venmo, Apple Pay, MasterCard, and more for quick and easy deposits into your account this football season. I also got a sweet deal going on right now where one Dak Prescott passing yard in week 1 of the season will get you guys a free win on Prize Picks. So make sure you guys include this in all of your lineups leading up to week 1. It's a free square for you guys, so make sure you guys include it in all of your lineups. But if you guys want, download the Prize Picks app today. Plug in that promo code CLNS. Get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. But massive shout out to Prize Picks for sponsoring today's edition of Vikings Now by Chat Sports. Prize Picks, run your game. Alrighty, let's talk about some more wide receivers here that the Vikings could potentially trade for, but also sign with a good amount of cap space left. Again, $27 million left to spend, so the Vikings can damn near do whatever they want. Anything is on the table for this guy right here, Kwesi Adofo-Mensah. And the number one guy for me, if it's not Tyreek Hill, it's Colts wide receiver Alec Pierce. Everybody, take time out of your day after you're watching today's show and just go throw on Alec Pierce's 2024 highlights. This guy is a stud. I think he is one of the most undervalued, underrated wide receivers in the National Football League. And this past season, with playing with Joe Flacco and Anthony Richardson, he averaged 22.3 yards per catch. He almost had 1,000 yards on the entire year. And Pierce is my favorite choice besides Tyreek. There is no doubt in my mind. Honestly, there is a pretty big gap in terms of just talent you could bring in, where it's Tyreek Hill, a gap, Alec Pierce, and then another big gap to the next guy, Adam Thielen, which we'll talk about here in a second. But, Pierce is my favorite choice. I think he would be a great option. Now, yes, he is in a contract year. I don't know if the Vikings would be willing to pay him, but this could just be a one-year rental. If I'm believing what the Vikings are telling us, where, hey, this is a Super Bowl season, you have to be willing to give up draft capital to just take a one-year rental. It all goes back to the motto of F them picks, because you have to be aggressive, you have to be bold to get to the promised land, and this would be a bold move. Would I love giving up a third-round pick for just a one-year wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3? No. But if it results in the Vikings starting off the season 3-0, getting to the NFC Championship game, potentially getting to the Super Bowl, then yes, of course, I would be all in on it. But let's talk about him. You guys knew this was coming. I'm hooked on a Thielen right now, talking about Adam Thielen. Now, with the Panthers having a plethora of wide receivers, I think there is a chance that he will get dealt, probably not before the season unless the team gets overly aggressive, but I think definitely by the trade deadline, Thielen will be dealt somewhere else. And, I think a lot of us, when we're talking about Adam Thielen, obviously we get emotional talking about this guy. One of the coolest stories in NFL history, but this isn't about the storyline anymore. This is about football. This makes too much sense. He can still step in, be a great wide receiver 2 next to Jefferson, and him as a wide receiver 3 would still be one of the better ones in the league. This isn't about the storylines. This isn't about, a feel-good story for the fans. This is about getting real talent, and Adam Thielen is still that, because I thought after he left Minnesota, he was going to fall off the face of the earth. But he didn't. He's been awesome in Carolina the last 2 years. Even in just 10 games played this past season, 48 receptions, 615 yards, found the end zone 5 times. He could still be a great red zone threat. And even in the 2023 season, the guy had 100 catches and 1,000+ yards. He was still very, very productive. So Thielen, maybe you could call the Panthers and offer him a 4th-round pick. If that's the deal, I'm doing it. So, hey, Vikings fans, dust off those not KJ Osborn jerseys, Adam Thielen jerseys. But you may also have to dust off the KJ Osborn jerseys, because that's what we're talking about next. So I did put trade here, but there's also a good chance that KJ Osborn ends up getting cut. And this could be the typical, we'll see probably, 5 more of these trades come in over the next, 5 days before roster cutdown day, where a team, they send a player and a 7th-round pick, and then the team acquiring that will send a 6th-round pick in return. So a KJ Osborn trade could simply look like the Vikings are getting KJ, a 2026 7th, and the Vikings are sending over a 2026 6th-round pick. But there's also a chance the Commanders cut him. So if you're in the camp where, the Vikings shouldn't give up any draft capital for another player at this point, then KJ is probably your guy. But listen, I love Osborn. I think, obviously his last year in Minnesota, the drops were a major issue. He wasn't, he didn't really hit that next level, which we thought he was going to, which was a little disappointing. But he would just be another body. He would be somebody who understands offense. He, knows what Kevin O'Connell is trying to accomplish on every single play. And if he's your wide receiver 2 for week 1, next to some of these younger guys, I'm feeling better about the room. But KJ Osborn's not a needle mover anymore. And that's why I'd rather have the Vikings just go big fish hunting here. But again, same conversation with KJ, kind of just being a body, is how I feel about Brandon Powell. Now, Brandon Powell obviously knows Kevin O'Connell for his times back in LA. He was with the Vikings, this past season, and he would also add some juice at the punt returning spot too, which would obviously is still a need for the Vikings. But Brandon Powell knows the system. He knows the scheme, and Brandon Powell also wants to be back on the Vikings. I thought it was pretty telling that he was on the game, or he was at the game this past Saturday. He posted this on his Instagram story. Now, he was shouting out Ja'Shawn Jones and Thayer Thomas, so maybe he was just there supporting these guys, but there's a reason he hasn't signed anywhere else. Maybe he was waiting on some injuries across the league, and obviously with the injuries piling up for the Minnesota Vikings here, Powell does make some sense. Punt returner, can be a solid wide receiver 3, and even if the Vikings do get healthy with Addison, Ty Felton, Jalen Nailor coming back, he'll just be a good wide receiver 5 to have in the room as well. But a guy I get asked about a whole lot, Amari Cooper. Now, Amari Cooper, in his prime, he was a hell of a player. He had some of the best releases in the game, especially his time with the Dallas Cowboys. Some of the best routes you ever see ran on an NFL field. But I'm completely out on Amari, and mainly for 2 reasons. One, this guy's not a willing blocker. especially in the run game. Like, that has been his Achilles heel his entire career, even back in his prime. People would get on him for not being a willing run blocker. And plus, over the last couple of seasons, drops have been a major issue. He had 12 drops this past year. I would honestly rather have the Vikings just roll out with Lucky Jackson and the Jones brothers, Jay Sean and Tim, instead of going and giving Amari Cooper like $5-6 million. I bet you Amari will sign with like the Bills again or just go to Pittsburgh. So I'm out on Amari Cooper. If you're going to go get a free agent, I would just rather get Brandon Powell. Obviously undersized receiver, but at least he tries to run block and he can offer you some punt return, ability there. So I'm all in on Tyreek. I'm all in on Alec Pierce. I'm all in on Adam Thielen. Let's go big fish hunting here because we need it. Like, this wide receiver room, it's awesome when they're fully healthy, but injuries are a real thing. And now this group, like the wide receiver position, is a real need. You're not going to fix that need by getting guys like Cooper, by getting guys like Brandon Powell, KJ Osborn. Go swing for the fences here. F them picks. But if you guys could, drop a name for me down below in the comment section. Name a receiver the Vikings should bring in, whoever it may be. Let me know your thoughts down below. We'll see you guys next time. As always, Skol Vikes.